Hello and welcome back once again to the Hard Knocks podcast, and we talk about everything that they don't teach you in school and you end up learning the hard way through scrapes and bruises over the history of time, unless you're fortunate enough to be one of those people that have a mentor along the way that tell you, I busted my leg, don't do this. And that's what we're hoping to do for you.
Right.
So if you don't have that mentor, or maybe you do and you kind of need to supplement them a little bit, because not all of them are made equal.
Right. But we can be their mentor.
We can be your mentor's mentor.
Like a virtual mentor.
That's true. Yeah,
Right,
that's
right.
true. Yeah. So that's what we're here to go and do. Man, but I have to say, we just spent the last 4 hours here in the studio setting up all the new internet. And this guy helped me set up literally everything using Ubiquity and everything.
Right.
Kind of crazy, super nice. And we have great internet connection
Yeah,
now, which
it's
is
really
wonderful.
great. Yeah. For those of you who remember how to wire an RJ45 jack, if you're interested, or if you are, put a comment in there because I want to know how many of you are out there who actually have wired a RJ45 jack.
Yep.
I do that.
Well, the thing that's nice is that Hard Knocks is you've done it enough times, you kind of know,
Right.
oh, well, don't use the punch downs, use the pass-throughs.
Right.
And
It's
how
easier.
to do it because it's just way easier and way faster. But it's all those things
Right.
that you won't know unless someone tells you. And so we're going to go talk about one right now.
Yep.
And this is an episode dedicated very much. All three topics we're going to talk about today are all about when you're making a new service and a new product, or if you're trying to expand outwards and telling you how it's actually done. And the first thing we're going to be talking about here, the first hard knock, is about when you go into college or study marketing in any way, shape, or form.
Yep.
What people commonly tell you is, okay, great. The first step is to go out there before a product is built, before anything happens, you're going to go and do field research. And this field research is going to inform you to everything you need to know.
Right.
And you're going to end up finding the product you actually need to build by doing the research first. So it's kind of research, product gets built, and then maybe you iterate afterwards.
Yeah.
But we've talked a lot about this because that's not how it actually happens.
That is definitely not how it happens in practice. In fact, it's kind of funny because I've got my MBA. My major was in marketing, engineering undergrad, and you really think that there's going to be this understanding that you just go out and talk to people, and you've got your questionnaires, and sometimes it's secondary research, which means you're reading a report that someone else has generated, or you go out and talk to the real customer. Here's the problem. The big assumption is that you know who the customer is that you're actually going to interview. That is almost impossible to find out who the actual buyer is. So there's a better way to do it, and how it's actually done in practice in the real world. Now, I know that someone's going to send us a little note and say, oh, but that's not the way it's actually done. Well, let me tell you, you're going to be the person on the edge case because the reality is far different, and we're going to get into that.
Yeah. I think the first main point is that when you go to school trying to learn about marketing 101,
Right.
Or
101.
102, 201, etc., right? Is that all those courses are teaching you from the perspective of marketing comes first,
Right.
and it always takes the lead.
Yes.
But I think the thing that's most interesting is that there's two fashions to this. The
Right.
first fashion is what tends to really happen. Because when you're in the marketing team, you're not the one generally ideating on new things. It is very hard for you to generally even get access to talk to the customers in the first place.
Right.
So if there's anyone coming up with a new idea, it's the sales team or the engineers. And more often than not, what tends to happen is the engineers come up with this cool idea.
Right.
And they're like, wow, this is nifty. Let's just go make it. And they go and literally start making it.
Sure. Right.
And then it drops on your desk.
Yep.
And now you have to go figure out what happens. And it's very common for the people in marketing to get very frustrated with this because
Right.
they're taught you start with field research. But what we're saying is, one, that's not how it happens anywhere, so don't even think that's a possibility.
Yeah.
But the second thing, too, is that, well, it's honestly better if it happens the way it currently is.
I totally agree.
Because just to reharp on the point, if you're trying to do field research, let's just step back for a minute. One of the big problems is, finding out who you should even be talking to.
Right. Yep.
You don't know.
Hmm.
And I can say case in point, this has happened for a number of services we've developed.
Right.
What were we naming them? It was Acme Corp. Right.
Acme.
Yeah.
Right.
Acme Corp needed a lot of case studies made.
Yes.
We're
Mhm.
talking about hundreds of case studies.
Yeah. In depth.
Yeah. Very in-depth ones, not
Right.
like 5 sentences here what we did. We're talking about a nice report
Right.
that
Yep.
you hand over to someone.
Right.
The issue was, man, there's a big budget concern. So what did we do? Well, we have a whole, language model generative AI team. So we said, great, how could we go do this?
Right.
We built the tool and then we executed it and it worked really well. So then what happens? Well, essentially we plopped it on the desk of our own marketing team's department, which is basically John and I made it, but then John and I in a separate department said, now we got to go market it.
Right.
That's what happens.
Yes.
But it's because we built the product first that you end up realizing, wait, it can be used in all these other different ways.
Yes.
And if you listen to us last episode where we talked about building a looks like demo,
Right.
that is insanely helpful if you're doing any field research anyways.
Mhm.
Because people kind of need to be able to see what's happening.
Yes, exactly. And I think that there's always nuances in this kind of thing. So you think about what I read about in the marketing text when I got my MBA was mainly written by big advertising agencies, people at Northwestern, classical marketing, cool, great stuff. All about big companies. Why big companies? Because big companies give you access to that kind of thing.
Right.
And people recognize them. But reality is the majority of businesses are not Fortune 500 companies. And believe it or not, there's only 500 companies in the Fortune 500. Fortune 500.
That's
I know,
why
it's
it's
amazing.
named that? Oh,
Right.
God, I thought there were 50.
Right. And you think about the millions of companies that are in the United States just on its own, it's hard to find those kind of exercises. So I don't fault the textbook writers an understanding that they're going to focus on the big companies. But even then, there is somebody that's involved in product development, someone in engineering, someone that's close to the customer. They see the customer pain, or it could be someone that you see on Shark Tank all the time. Hey, I've got this great idea. And they come on the show and they've
Yep.
sold some, but then the sharks are asking, I wonder where we can expand upon this. So I kind of think of sort of 3 different kinds of product development. One is just pure raw. No one's ever thought about it before. It's rare, but you may do some research, talking to potential customers before you spend a lot of money on something, but that's in a minority. The majority fall into these other 2 camps. One camp already has a product, and they're asking, who else can we sell this to? How do we expand this, right? Or these are people, the third category is, I think where we started the show is there are people that have developed a prototype and they're wondering, can I sell it anywhere? And I think that was, I believe it was Zaptron Labs came to
Yep.
us. I think that's the right one.
Yep.
That they came to us and said, hey, we've developed this widget. We haven't been able to sell it to anybody. Who else could we sell it to?
Yep.
Right? Now,
Oh, we have started to do that for Zaptron Labs, but I think what you're actually thinking about is Wayne.
Wayne, excuse me. Right.
Wait,
Right.
no, Stark Industries. Sorry, there are so many different code names. We started to have enough now that we could. Yeah, no, it is Stark Industries.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Because the guy's a big Iron Man fan.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah,
Right.
that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, and we ended up having to find out if it was a good fit or not.
Right.
In that case, we ended up finding out it wasn't a good fit, and we gave him the tough news.
Yeah.
But that's not how it always happens.
Right.
Yeah, I think the main point that we're really trying to make here is instead of getting upset or trying to change how
Mhm.
product development is done, or if you're thinking, man, we're a company, we would like to figure out what is something that we could just go and build.
Right.
Do not have your marketing team go out there just
Mm-hmm.
looking for a solution doing field research. Instead, you probably have multiple different problems that you internally are having or your customers have.
Right.
That's where your good ideas come from. Fixing an existing problem because you have a customer already ready. You have someone that is going to help you feel the pain for it. And then you can get a works like demo. And then you can get an actual prototype. And then everything comes together. Because in the end of the day, to me, the big reason why this methodology has to stay the way it is. And you can't and should not change it, despite how logically sounding it is.
Right.
Here's the big problem, right? Predictably Irrational, right down here in one of my favorite books. Here's the thing. People are terrible at introspection. There's hardly anybody I even know who takes a walk and really thinks about stuff every day. Like, well, why did I really feel that way?
Right.
That's a rarity. People don't do that. However, that's what you are asking someone to do in field research. They aren't thinking about the pain point they have. And even if you try to bring it up,
Right.
unless they've been actively experiencing it or have something that they can attach a feeling to, like you're giving them, it's so hard to put feelings into words. There's a reason why that famous quote is, "I'm sorry I wrote you a long letter because I didn't have the time to write you a short one."
Correct.
That's what happens.
Right.
And what you are doing when you give someone something physical or it looks like works like demo is that you're giving them a shortcut to like, oh, that's the words I'm trying to go and figure out. Yes, we have that problem.
Right.
And that's why this process is still just the best that there is.
Yeah. And I want to encourage people to think creatively, whatever that might mean to you. So, I think about a product like WD-40. Now, what you may not know is that WD-40 came really out of the NASA program.
I did not know that.
It was a in fact, WD stands for water displacement. And it was an idea of how do I keep water and rust from forming on my rocket engines.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
And
a
this
problem.
goes back to, I don't know, the 1950s or something. There's now more than 1,001 uses for WD-40. In fact, almost every home in America has a can of WD-40.
I got one right out there.
Exactly. Everybody has one. And they misuse it for all sorts of things, right? But it is absolutely fascinating when you let people think creatively. And I think they even ran promotions years ago, like, hey, whatever uses have you found out? They didn't even know that people use, like for arthritis, people sprayed on their hands so that it kind of works into their joints so they have more movement. I have no idea if that's just a wives' tale or not, but it's on their website.
Yeah.
So I think...
Well, it reminds me of Post-it notes.
Yeah.
A lot of the best inventions
Oh,
in
I
the
love
world
that story.
are, I was trying to solve a problem that I had, and someone else ended up finding out that there are a multitude of other problems that it solves.
Right.
Some better than I thought.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Post-it notes was a man trying to make an incredibly sticky adhesive.
Yes.
And it was a mistake in his development process. And I think, wasn't his wife or something that ended up using it to like tack different things together?
No, so that inventor, as I understand it, was in church or there was some and he saw a friend of his who had notes all through his Bible, and the light bulb went on. Oh, that's interesting. I bet I could put some of this on some sticky notes. Here I'm using the term, right?
Yeah.
On pieces of paper and let him move those, right? Take little notes.
Yes, he needs, yeah.
And so it was really like, oh, this is for people that read their Bible and take notes. I mean, that was the application.
And lo and behold, it's in every single household now.
Right.
But it didn't start that way. It started with one problem, a solution made just for that. I mean, this gets into a whole different topic like niche thyself.
Yes.
Which is, who's the one who said that? It was
Guy Kawasaki.
Yeah, Guy Kawasaki. Yeah, which is about you build a product to go and start with a very, very small little niche.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
It really is. But the three topics we have today kind of are a step in the product journey, which I thought was kind of a little fun.
Yeah.
So we're talking about how you developed a new product.
Yeah.
So now you have it, or you have a new service. You have that works like demo. Or ideally, you start to have maybe a couple different customers here and there that are using it.
Right. Different applications.
Right. So now you got like a sales team.
Yes.
And they're going out there.
Yeah.
Well, there are 3 distinct questions that your sales team should know about. And you, as the one building your tool or service, need to know that you have to have an answer for.
Yes.
Because if you have a good answer for all 3 of them, it means that you have a slam dunk of a product or a service. And those 3 questions are, what are we selling? How do we sell it? And what color do I paint it? Now, this kind of comes, I mean, you're the one who taught me this, so I'm going to throw this one right over to you. Let's talk about the first question here.
Sure. So we're getting into Hard Knocks number 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure I'm following along with you.
Yeah.
So this comes from Jim Paglia. Jim is, in my mind...
Jim?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. Jim, Love you, man. You're awesome. Oh,
Yeah.
man, that dude is so great. Oh, man, talk about a man who loves branding and understand. Anyways,
Yeah.
yes.
He definitely understands it.
It comes from him.
Right. He's the
Wow.
one.
Well, you know what, Jim? We're sending this episode out to you, buddy.
Right. Yeah. We love Jim. And the thing that I loved about Jim is that he is the ultimate insight, boil it down to something simple. People get it when he's talking. And so I was asking him, like, marketing. Here I'm running a marketing agency for probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years at the time. And I had not met him. He came in my office and we just, hit it off right away. And we got into he says, well, marketing is just 3 things. It's just, what are we selling? How do we sell it? And what color do we paint it?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, okay. I don't get that last one. I get the, what are we selling? Okay. What exactly is the problem we're trying to solve here?
Yeah.
How do we sell it? Oh, well, that's me. That's channel marketing. That's what is the right channels that I'm going to use in order to reach my customer in the most effective manner.
Yep.
But that third, what color we paint it? And I was like, okay, Jim, tell me a little bit more about this.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, oh, well, that's the colors and the logos and the style and all that gets wrapped around. He said,
The brand.
That's what people think is the brand. And
Yeah.
he would tell you,
No.
wrong.
It's the whole experience.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
As he said, your brand is the net, the
Sum
net
of all experiences.
customer experiences. Right. Thank you.
Yep.
So I said, well, that's interesting. And he said, here's the problem, John. Everyone gets this wrong. They do it in the reverse direction. He said, the first thing people think about is, what color I paint it? I'm going to work on the name. I'm going to have a font and a logo, and it's going to look like this on a shelf of a Home Depot, or it's going to have this impact, and I want purple everywhere. And he said, that's where people start, and they often get derailed. And he said, then generally, once they kind of figure that out, and then they move on to, how do we sell it? Like, oh, it's going to sell this channel distribution. But they never come, or very infrequently do they finally get to that first question, which is, what is it that we're selling?
Yeah. And that's a really key question, because the first part of what are we selling,
right,
is defining, what problem am I trying to come up with? Now, we're not going to talk too much about that, because that's what the entirety of the first Hard Knock was, which is really establishing what problem. And that's why you build a product to solve a specific problem first.
Right.
However, a lot of times when you start thinking about what is it that I'm really selling here, is you will end up discovering, you might think that you were building a product, but you're really selling a service, or vice versa. And some of the best examples of that to get you start to thinking here is, a lot of people think that HP, the maker of a lot of printers out there, are selling printers, but they're not. What they're selling is ink. Or let's think about Google. We all have, so many people have Android phones out there. Google is not selling their Android operating system, nor are they going out there selling their phones. What they're selling are all of the Google services that are on all the Android phones by default.
Right.
And so when you start thinking about this, what you realize is, okay, the first step here is figuring out, okay, well, am I really selling what I think I am? Or is it maybe a gateway to something else? Now, this is going to be probably more like a 20% of you have this, 80% won't. But it's very key and important to remember this.
Right.
And it kind of starts getting you into the next part, which is, well, if I am selling something, I have to understand what is it that it's replacing.
Right.
Because the problem that you are solving did not come out of thin air. It has existed. Even if it is from some brand new piece of tech out there, it's at least existed for a couple weeks to a month. In fact, the longer that problem has existed, the better your product will be. You generally don't want to be always the first one solving a problem, because that person has no idea what they're actually doing, and you can learn from all their mistakes.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of the first question. What are we selling?
Right. And I think that it's the replacing, I think also is, how are they solving this today? Because people are solving the problem, or they're just ignoring the problem, or it's just too expensive to solve that problem. But one way or another, people are making a decision, and that's a key thing that I learned through the Buyer Persona Institute, is the research there is all about the decision that's been made. and customers are making decisions, whether or not you believe it or not. They are really making a decision one way or another when it comes to these products.
Yeah. And then there's the second question, which is, how do we sell it?
Right. Oh boy. Well, that's a huge.
I know, that's a lot. I mean, hey,
Right.
I mean, we don't script these out, but we have big notes, and this one's taken up a little bit of space here. Yeah.
When I think about how you sell it, think about all the different ways in which you can buy a particular product or service. For example, pizza, for instance.
Yeah.
Sometimes just differentiating yourself based on how it's sliced is a big deal. I mean, Little Caesars made quite a big deal when they were selling their pizza that wasn't circular. It was in squares, and they sold it in squares. Or when I was in college, there was a place on campus that sold pizza, and it was standard fare pizza, except it was sold by the slice. That was a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't have to go buy a pizza. You didn't have to go get a bunch of friends to split a pizza. And it wasn't an individual pizza. It was just a slice, right?
Yep.
And they literally became a very big organization just because they sold it by the slice.
Well, the key thing there for all of you to notice is, remember how John said that you want to go through these questions top to bottom. You don't want to start at what color you paint it,
Right.
and you don't want your one after that to be, what are we selling? You want to start with, you don't want it to be, how do we sell it? You want to start with, what are we selling?
Right.
Because the key
What
thing
problem
there,
is solved? Yeah.
right?
Yep.
If you know what the problem is, you know what the problem that pizza was solving? Campus kids are hungry. Now, when you start digging down a little bit deeper into that, though, wow, do they need an entire pizza, or do we need to make it incredibly easy for these kids that are on a budget, that don't have tons of money, that probably can't afford to, because they're eating pizza probably half of the week?
Right.
They can't
Probably
get
every day.
Yeah, they cannot afford to go and get a pizza for themselves all the time. I mean, these are college kids, and there's a lot of budget out there, right?
Yeah.
I know of friends that literally ate ramen noodles for 6 months.
Sure.
And that is the only thing that they ate.
Yep.
However, that's how they started to pivot. And not to steal your spotlight, but what I love, my favorite example of this is what HP has done with their printers over the years.
Oh, totally.
Now, many of you probably don't know, but back in the day, right, it was all about, you buy the printer and the ink, and that's what was important.
Right.
But HP has started to realize that a lot of people, they don't print as much anymore, right? It has evolved over time, but it's still important to have. And people don't want to drive over to Kinko's anymore,
Right.
or to the UPS store or FedEx to go print stuff out.
Yeah.
I want it on demand, and like you should. And that's why printers existed. So what have they done now? If you go on their website, they sell printers as a service. You go online, and for something like $7 a month, depending on what printer you want, they ship you a printer. That printer then sits inside of your office, and it auto detects when ink is running low, and then they just ship out the ink to you, all for a flat fee of like $7 to $8 a month. Now, of course, there's surcharges if you print out too much.
Yep.
However, it solves an amazing problem. They're selling the exact same thing that they always were, ink. The printers are a gateway to selling the ink, but now they're making it way easier. But just think about it. If they started selling it that way, it would have been a disaster 20 years ago.
Oh, sure.
No one would want it.
Right. Yep.
But it evolved over time, and so now they're selling it that way. It's really, really cool. I love it.
In fact, I bought one of those printers when I had just moved out to Denver, and I didn't have much room, and I didn't want to buy a new printer because I had several beautiful printers in storage back in Chicago before I moved. So I didn't want to invest in. So I got one of those. And when you end your subscription, by the way, that printer is dead as a doornail. You can't do anything with it. It's just it's a doorstop right now.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Well, to me, one of the other things about how do we sell it isn't just how do you package it up.
Sure.
But it also becomes, now I'm starting to think, I know what problem my customer has because I already have built that product.
Right.
And I already probably have a couple customers.
Yeah.
So now what you have your sales team going out there, you have to start thinking about what support can I give my sales team to get something over the line.
Right.
And so, I mean, talk a little bit about that for everyone. Like, what is it like doing that? What are some of the things that people should really be thinking about in that part of the process?
I would say don't limit yourself to the channel that you have sold through before. And
Channel meaning if you were doing just digital advertising, you have to do more digital advertising.
no, I'm not saying from promotional side. I'm
Yeah.
saying how you actually want to sell something.
Okay.
Right. So, for example, you may sell through a retail store. Well, you could sell through online, or you could sell through independent representatives.
Oh, literally your channels.
Right. Your channels of marketing, right? You may sell through a private distribution. You may sell on Amazon. You may have affiliates that you want to sell through, right?
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of different markets, flea markets. Yeah, there's people who sell on flea markets. Franchising. We just had a conversation this week with someone, and very interesting project. And he said, well, I think I'm going to grow, but the best way I can grow is by acquisition. And I said, why did you come to that conclusion? And he said, well, because I talked with so-and-so, and he said, that's the best way to do it. And I said, well, you're limiting your thinking. There's another way to do this. You could franchise this. Oh, well, when I franchise, I lose all the control.
Yeah.
Well, that's not true at all. Franchising is probably the fastest way to grow because you're not using your own money. You're using your franchisees' money to grow in their own local market, and you have to have rules and regulations and stipulations about how they're going to be conducting business based on your standards. And guess what? Some of the largest companies, McDonald's, for instance, it's a franchise. They do own 20% of their stores.
Yeah.
But the rest of them, they're all franchise.
Yeah. Yeah. But what you're really driving home is experiment.
Absolutely.
And some of the others. When you're trying to figure out how to sell it, well, the really big point is what channels really are conducive to the product that you're selling, because each channel has its different types of I don't want to say baggage, but people feel differently through different channels. So if you're at a flea market, very different emotional state than online, which is very different than being in a retail store, which is very different than selling through an affiliate program.
Right.
I mean, very, very different.
Different buyers, though. That's the cool
They're
thing.
all different. I mean, even if they're the same buyer.
Right.
And, the person who would have been bought through a affiliate might be at a flea market, but it's going to come off very differently just because of the people and the audience around
Well, think
you.
about it. How many people buy on Amazon, or they decide, no, I'd actually like to have a direct relationship with that manufacturer.
Yes, exactly.
Even if it's the same price, right? And I'm one of those kind of people. There are certain products I would prefer to buy from the manufacturer themselves. One, I know that Amazon's taking 35 or 40% of the top line. So, I recognize that for really good products, for them to continue to be really good products, they need to have more margin to deal with.
Yes.
So, that's my business line. Yeah, so I'd rather buy direct.
Yeah,
right?
I don't do that for Amazon, but what I do is, so I do read a lot of novels that are originally published in Japanese in Japan, right?
Okay.
And so when I'm thinking about how do I want to archive all these books, because I love having a study, my favorite room.
Right.
Do I buy them in English, where they've been translated to, or do I buy them in Japanese? When I do, I buy all from the Japanese because it goes and supports the author.
There
Almost
you go.
100%. And the ones in
Absolutely.
English, 0%.
Right.
Yeah. And it's very interesting.
Yeah. So my point there is, when it comes to how do you sell it, don't limit yourself at all. Really start thinking about this, and don't limit it based on the people that you know. Ask people who know someone that you don't know that might have an alternative strategy and bring you into a market that you've never thought about. In fact, I think that's one of the strengths, when we were talking about what our strengths are the other day. One of the strengths I know that I have is I have worked for over 100 different companies, and they're in various different industries and segments. And so I'll often see a challenge that one of my clients is facing that's already been solved in a different industry. And so I can bring that to
Bring
them,
it over, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But had that client not been exposed to me, or someone like me, they would not have had that experience and be able to expand in a different market.
Yeah, and be willing to do so in the first place.
Right. So you have to be open-minded. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And then after you've done that, now you can start thinking about, what color do I paint it?
Yeah.
Thinking about, okay, well, what does the logo really need to be?
Yeah.
What is my company name? Things like...
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Take a moment. I want anyone out there, if you don't know this already, what was the name of Google before it was Google?
Oh, I'm not going to answer this one because I looked it up yesterday when we were finishing the outline, and I had no idea.
So take a moment, pause for just a second, If you know it, put it in the comments.
You know, I could give him a little hint right now. You know, just, just a
Exactly.
little hint like that. Yeah.
Back rub.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
It was actually called back rub.
Yeah,
Can you
and I'm
believe that?
thinking, hey, could you back rub that for me?
I would love that. Oh, can you imagine what the world would look like if that was the case? Because you know those back scratchers?
Right.
Someone would absolutely have that could be their logo.
Right.
It could be the back scratcher.
Yeah, I think of the Theraguns, that literally are like a machine gun on your back or whatever. Yeah.
Yes. That would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that would have lasted very long.
No. Do you have any other fun ones?
Well, I'm probably dating myself, but back when people had phones, especially in business, before Apple literally took over or Android took over, you had this thing called a BlackBerry, which also was known as a Crackberry. And you can Google that and find out why.
Well, people got addicted to that.
Oh, totally addicted.
That's why it was crack.
Yeah, it was crack. And I maybe I've mentioned this in another episode, but the funniest thing is it had a real keyboard on it. And so people were literally underneath their
meetings and doing
and they were texting each other without being able to see a screen.
That's pretty crazy.
I mean, they're literally just doing touch typing on a Crackberry.
Yeah.
But that original company name was not BlackBerry. It was called Research in Motion.
Oh, that's why RAM. Yeah, RIMS. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, there's some other examples that we had here. I think about the kiwi fruit. That's actually the Chinese gooseberry. Some smart person came up with a better name than the Chinese gooseberry, which has all sorts of other weird connotations.
I didn't know. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
But the reason why, just bringing it back here, right? That was really fun though.
Yeah.
Is the reason why you want this step to be last is you have to go back to what is the purpose of a name.
Right.
What is the purpose of a logo? What are they trying to do? What a good logo and a good name are supposed to do is to give you a shortcut to feeling the experience that this product is going to give you.
Right.
That's what their purpose is. There is nothing else at all. Maybe being memorable, that is also very important.
Sure.
But if it has literally nothing to do whatsoever with what you're trying to do, then you do have a bit of an uphill battle at first in marketing.
Yeah, and I think being willing to change that over time. I mean, just Google Disney's logo over the years. You'll see that here is one of the best branding companies out there.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been willing to change their logo. I think that's huge.
kept the ears, but other things have changed.
Well, I'm thinking about they have the Cinderella's palace is part of the logo.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Well, but the thing is that you can't really come up with a really great name and a really great logo until you start to have a feeling of this is what I want it to kind of feel like.
Right.
And if you think you know that at the beginning, you're wrong. And you don't. I mean, I've personally gone through this, not as much as you, but even my my D&D YouTube channel that I run. I still love the name, Modular DM. I still think that's a wonderful name. It would have been actually, from fun trivia for you, it would have been Modular GM. However, the thing is, looking in the future, if you shorten that down, that becomes MGM or MGM Studios, and that's a copyright infringement. So I can't do that. So I had to become Modular DM to be MGM or MGM Studios, just to avoid a potential problem. So that's what happens when you're a marketer. You think down the line.
That is a very big goal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you don't even want the URL.
Yeah.
Because you could get in trouble.
Sure.
Right? Those guys will hunt you down.
Yeah.
They will. Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they'll hunt you down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Immediately.
Yeah.
However, getting back, the logo I just kind of threw together. But now that I've done enough of them and I've been working with it for a while now, I have a pretty good idea, I think, what I might want my logo to be.
Right.
And I might have changed the name. However, because I've been doing it long enough now, your customers, by the way, might literally come up with your name.
Yeah.
That's the best way.
Well, that was FedEx.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Sure. FedEx was actually Federal Express.
Really?
And that was named that way because they were moving federal documents. That was the intention of the company. That's how Fred Smith originally wrote his MBA business plan. And I think he only got a B for it or something like that. He did not get an A.
Hey, you know what? If you take a lot of the things that we talk about in Hard Knocks, you're not going to get an A in marketing class.
That's true. Right.
You'll get an A when you join a company
Yeah.
because they won't have to give you 6 months of training just to hop on board.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you have to be willing to listen to your customers that eventually became FedEx. And then what's well known is when you look at the FedEx logo, there's an arrow inside the logo, right?
Yeah. Oh, when I
I love
realized that, it's
Right.
so good.
Yeah.
That's the definition of an amazing logo, by
Yeah.
the way.
That
Oh my
one will be
gosh.
there for a very, very,
Very
long time.
long time.
Yeah.
But
Amazon, same thing, A to Z,
I think before we go into the last part here,
Mhm.
though, the last hard knock, because we talked about you create a product. Now you have to figure out how do I get customers to buy that product.
Right.
And now we're going to move over into now you have customers. So how do you really continue to optimize at that point?
Right.
But how about can you summarize for everyone the importance of those 3 questions and what might change for them now? Just because we talked about a lot of different things. So just
Sure.
kind of quick summarize it for them.
Right. So
Because if you're in a car right now picking up your kids from everything, that's who we're thinking about. So
Right.
we're
Yeah.
trying to be cognizant of you.
So again, there's 3 questions that we want to review. One is, what are we selling? How do we sell it? And what color we paint it? And it's important to do it in that order. So think about the real problem, the problem that you're trying to solve, or if you're taking an existing product to a new market, let people look at it, let it sit on the table, and let them come up with ideas. In other words, listen to your customers. When it comes to how do I sell it, we talked about how can we be thinking outside the box, be listening to other people, take in consultants to help us expand our thinking of how we can sell this product. You might go to different trade shows, you might go to different conferences just to learn that there may be some other applications for your particular product.
Well, specifically what channels you might want to go and
Which
sell
channels?
it in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you've figured out from the first step what you are actually selling.
Yes.
And then you move into the last part, which is, okay, well, now we can paint it.
Yes. Now we can come up with the logo and the name and the colors and be willing to even open to those things changing over time.
Yep. So the last part, though, is you've got a working product. You've got a working service. Well, how do you aggressively continue to make it better and better and better? And it's through things, customer research. Because the thing that happens is when you start off, we're going to talk about this all over again. I guess it's becoming, this used to be my buddy Luke Rablewski's thing. I guess this is becoming my thing because I think I've said it every episode. Company customer gaps. We're going to talk about it all over again right now, okay? You start off incredibly close together. As you grow over time, you grow further away from the customer because there's too many of them. You can't see them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to that, well, there's just more people between you, the founder or the creator or the marketing team or whatever, and actually seeing how a customer is using it.
Right.
And so you have to use things like customer interviews as you aggressively start to expand. At the beginning, you don't have to because you're literally talking to them.
Right.
You probably built it for one person.
Correct.
So you don't need
Very
to do
true.
a customer interview. It's
Right.
pointless. You don't have customers.
Right.
But when you have a bunch of customers, like even like say 50 to 100, now you need to close that gap again. Because remember, what we just talked about in hard knock number 2, you want to know what we're selling. That changes over time. And when you have more and more people, you're going to open up the doors to all these people that are thinking about using this thing in different ways. Just imagine what would happen if WD-40 never did types of customer interviews or didn't watch YouTube videos of what people are making using it for. They'd never know that it has like 1 million use cases.
Correct.
And they'd never market it that way. However, to do a good customer interview, there are 2 golden questions, and they are the questions that hardly any good customer interviewer out there use. These are like true hard knocks that you don't learn unless you have literally been down in the weeds, in the well, working on this.
Right.
And they are, how are you solving this problem today?
Yes.
And take me back to the day that you decide to start looking for a solution to this problem and tell me what happened.
Yes.
Now, we're going to go through each of those one by one. That last one was a little wordy, so don't worry about it. We'll be saying it all over again, probably multiple different times.
Yes.
But let's talk a little bit. I'm going to throw it over to you.
Sure.
Talking about how are you solving the problem today, the power behind that, and why this is a question that you need to ask in customer interviews. And I would go so far as to say every single one of your sales team should make sure they are trained to always ask this question first.
Yeah. And by the way, as we talked on many other episodes, I hope you're not listening and just thinking this is a marketing and sales thing. This is a human thing. This is how you become a good friend. This is about how do you solve that problem today, is really looking at somebody's need and like, oh, it's interesting. I can help them, right? I mean, it's really becoming a better person as you're reading them, like, wow, this has applications way beyond marketing and
Oh,
sales.
you're right, because you are asking first a how question,
Yeah,
which is unaccusatory. And
right.
it's showing that you are curious about them, that you're not throwing in a solution, and you just want to learn.
Sure.
And that's the first, maybe another episode, but that is a very, very key
Yeah, I mean,
thing. Yeah.
people complain about things all day long, right? And if you were a good friend, rather than just sitting there and agreeing with them, or maybe having a conversation or criticizing their thinking, what would happen if you just said, "Well, I hear that that's something that comes up on a regular basis. How are you solving that problem today?"
Yep.
Right? And so when it comes to marketing, these two questions come from the Buyer Persona Institute work that I've done. I mentioned this before. I work with Adele Rivella when she first started the Buyer Persona Institute. I have personally conducted close to 800 interviews with Fortune 500 executives. And these two questions are really the only questions we had to ask in any of our interviews. And the things that we need to understand is, how are you solving this problem today? And this was not some, it sounds lame. It sounds like it's not a very in-depth question. And sometimes I had to ask it numerous times. It's sort of like watching a Perry Mason episode where he's asking the same question 10 different times, 10 different ways, but you're still asking the same question.
Oh, well, you're getting into it's like psychological aspect of mirroring. And
Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, that is a topic for probably a whole hard knock.
All right.
But there are these things in your brain literally called mirror neurons. And you can see them go into play when you are watching someone and you spend a good deal of time with them. Your brain mimics them.
Wow.
It does. And it is very commonly when you see people who are truly like in love or are very good friends, their footsteps are the same. They walk kind of the same way. They will finish these other sentences. And because you start to walk, right? And when you start to learn that, the whole concept of mirroring is having a shortcut.
Wow.
And it's saying, okay, well, how can I make someone feel like I truly am trying to understand you? Now, you can use this for evil, but of course, we use it for good.
Right.
Which is what you're doing when you're asking those questions, like, how are you solving that today? Or, oh, how are you solving that today? And constantly asking that in maybe some slightly different ways.
Yep.
You are basically saying, I see you. I'm using your same kind of language a little bit, and I'm delving in deeper. I'm delving in deeper. And the reason you need to delve in deeper each time, at least for this question,
Yes.
this doesn't have to do with mirroring this, is people are really bad at introspection.
That's right.
People are really bad at introspection. I'm getting animated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
They're horrible at it. And people will tell you, oh, like if we could role play this really quick.
Sure.
But
Go ahead.
let's do it. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
You interview me on the internet stuff that we just did.
Okay.
About how I was solving the problem before it even happened. Like, how would you do this interview?
Sure.
Starting with just that question.
Yeah, I would say, hey, David, I understand that you were looking at a different Wi-Fi solution for your home. How are you solving that problem today? How are you providing Wi-Fi for your house?
Well, I just moved in about a year and a half ago, and I wanted to keep things pretty simple.
Okay.
I didn't want to get down in the weeds to start because I just need internet. So I got a really nice Asus router that was Wi-Fi 6, and it was doing a pretty good job.
Okay, great. So what problem was it not solving for you? Why would you even be interested in doing something that would require an investment of time and money?
Well, my internet setup was all the way upstairs on the second floor of my house. And I wanted to use that as a study because I love studies. They're really cool. And so that means I would have to move everything down to the basement. And if I only have one access point via Wi-Fi, the signal all the way up on the second floor, which is where my office is going to be really bad. And I need that to be high throughput because I record and we edit videos, and those are 60 gigabyte files. So I kind of need to have good upload speed. So that's why I was looking at upgrading to having an access point on each floor.
Right. So we're not going to continue this.
Yeah.
But you can see how one question that is innocuous, people have no problem telling you how they solved a problem. He's now just identified the use case. One use case. What was it? It was about the amount of bandwidth he needed to do an upload of all of these video files.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm a researcher. I'm thinking, oh, that's an interesting application. Now I have uploading large video files. If I'm working for Comcast, or I'm working for Ubiquiti, or I'm working for Asus, right? I'm now putting categories down for, oh, that's an interesting use case that we haven't yet tackled.
Yeah, or market in a different way. And we
Market a
haven't
different way.
painted our product that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you could sell the same product 2 different ways.
Right, exactly.
They do, by the way, with like graphics cards. Oh yeah, they do that all the time.
Yeah, sure. So I think that's the power of
How are you solving this problem today?
solving it today? And I think the cool thing that I learned is when you ask a question, shut up. Just let the person talk.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to answer the question for them.
It'll feel awkward, like they're talking and talking. You want to interject. Don't.
Yes.
Just
Right.
be quiet. That was a good test. He succeeded.
I knew where you were going.
Yeah. See, he's mirroring. He started to like learn, back.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So one thing that question is really good at answering, the how are you solving this problem today question, is oftentimes you are selling a medicine or you're selling a vitamin. And a lot of people don't know which one they are selling. Now, that terminology is something that you and I understand really well.
Right.
But can you explain for everyone over there
Right.
what that really means?
Yeah. So when you think about pain and the things that drive you to a solution as fast as possible, you have a headache, you have a pain, you hurt yourself. You need to go find a solution immediately. And many times you'll be willing to spend any amount of money to solve that problem.
Yep.
That is the quote unquote aspirin. That is the kind of things that you're selling that are solving an immediate problem.
You need a solution right now.
You
need the
it right
effect
now.
to happen right now.
Right. Then you have the vitamins. These are the things that are good to have. They're nice to have, but you can put them off. And then many times I'd have to say that considered purchases, the big purchases like we were talking earlier about Cisco servers and so forth, because I can wait, they can always be categorized in the buyer's mind as a vitamin.
Yeah.
So many times the questions for us marketers is, how do I turn the vitamin sale into an aspirin sale?
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
How do I make something that could be put off, kicked down the street? They always talk about kicking the can down the street.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
How do I bring that current?
Yep.
And so,
by the way, everyone say hello to the airplane flying over ahead of us right now. Goodness gracious. I'm saying that right now because we're not editing that out. But yeah, so you're talking about making a vitamin feel like a medicine.
Yes.
And the importance of that. So like, what's an example of how you do that in the first place?
Yeah, so I think we were talking off camera is when you think about a solution for health, let's talk about vitamins, real vitamins, right? And I know that as a person that has been following my health, especially in the last 10 years, mainly because I've watched my mom get older and I've watched her become much more feeble and that she does not have the range of motion that she used to have. And of course, I'm thinking, what do I need to be doing today to solve that problem? Yeah. So I don't end up in a wheelchair, unable to move, and now other people have to take care of me, which is the last thing I want is you have to take care of me, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes something that now I can bring current day. So if I'm selling something like vitamin D and K2, well, what most people learned maybe through the pandemic is that by amping up the amount of vitamin D and K2 that you take, because K2 enables D to be metabolized, by positioning myself that way, I am actually now selling a pain relief. I'm selling aspirin, but it's really a vitamin.
Yeah.
Okay? Because it's tied to my wellness. Now, if I get sick, I can't go buy a bunch of vitamin D and expect me to be feeling better.
Yeah, it takes way too long to build it up.
Right.
Yeah.
However, other than this just episode that happened last week, and I know exactly what I did because I wasn't getting my sleep, but just last week I got sick, but it was the first time in maybe 8 years.
Yeah.
Right? I just don't get sick. Well, why? Because I take so many vitamins. I take care of myself. It's a really important thing. But the driving point of that is that I look at my mom and I can see that the last thing I want to do is become a burden to other people. And so I'm saying if I am a marketer and I'm selling a vitamin, these things that can be kicked down the road, then I want to figure out how do I position those things so that it is actually taking care of an immediate need,
Yeah.
bringing that long-term goal into today. So if I'm selling Cisco servers, for instance, and I know that my product can be delayed, now I want to find ways that I can actually move that forward. Maybe there are some instances, I don't know what they may be, but I'm sure the people at Cisco do, that they could be positioning those kind of products and moving them to a current day. Maybe they find that the biggest issue is money. Well, perhaps maybe there's a leasing program, and I'm sure they already thought about all this stuff. But
Yeah.
some way to make this more palatable. So now I take my pain relief or my vitamin and I'm turning it into a pain relief.
Yeah, I feel what you're really getting at here is in the vitamin sense is there's two different things going on. One is why is it that vitamins are always pushed off way more?
Last resort.
Yeah, last resort, and that's because of something known as hyperbolic discounting.
Mm-hmm.
And hyperbolic discounting is, I mean, I can do it really quick with you, right?
Sure.
Would you rather, there's gonna be two options. You have $20 right now, or if you wait 6 months, I'll give you $80.
Oh, okay. That means I have to wait, right?
You would have to wait
Yeah.
6 months for it.
Right. So bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And I would say, well, maybe I'll take the cash.
Right, exactly. And that's how most people end up responding and dealing with situations like that. You want the immediate, you want it right now. It's hard for me to envision what I look like in the future, right? That's the whole sense of hyperbolic discounting, right?
Sure.
People discount hyperbolically what happens in the future, right? So that's why vitamins aren't as good, especially when you're trying to sell them. I mean, selling the future is very difficult. People want to see something tangible, right? Looks like, works like, demo, etc.
Yeah.
The main thing that John's really describing here, though, is for the first hard knock that we really ran through, which is understanding what is it I'm selling. What you're selling is not him being healthier. He's not buying himself being healthier. You know what he's really buying? What he's truly buying is getting rid of the anxiety thinking that he might turn out like his mom. That is something you can sell. And now when you're taking vitamins like exercising a bit, now that is a medicine. By me doing this, I know I am fine. I know that I will be fine in my future, that I've done everything that I could. So I have nothing left to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that question we first posed is so important to do. You need to know what you're truly selling to someone. And generally changing yourself from being a vitamin to a medicine is just a changing, okay, what is it I'm truly selling? Your product doesn't have to change.
Very good.
Yeah, that's what really happens there.
Really true.
Yep. So that's some of the things that are really powerful about that first question. But we have another question.
Sure.
That also needs to be in the toolbox of anyone doing a customer interview. And by the way, customer interviews are literally any single time you are talking to a customer. Your sales team are doing customer interviews all the time. So these are questions that they need to be trained to constantly be asking, because the main power really of that first one, how are we solving this problem today, really it's just how much it disarms someone, because you really want to learn about them, and they will tell you so much once they know I actually care. You're not really trying to sell me something. What you're trying to do is get to know me more, so that, okay, sure, yeah, they want to make a better product. They need to know what problem that I need solved through their product.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
But the second question is, take me back to the day that you decide to start looking for a solution and tell me what happened. Now, what is the beauty of this question? Why do you love this one so much?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. And I mentioned earlier that Adele Ravella, I don't know if she invented this or if this is something that she came through her own research at the Biopersona Institute, but this was truly the only question that we had to ask in an interview. So we're interviewing Fortune 500 executives about a purchase decision that they made, generally about a considered purchase of some value, very expensive generally. And it was fascinating for me to hear this. I would ask this question, and people would respond in a way that they would they would walk me through their whole process. Well, here's what I did. Here's the person that I contacted. This is the kind of research that we did. And it started to paint this picture that people solve these problems very differently than what I had anticipated. Just going into this, didn't know. I had read for years that the first thing that people do is they go on the internet and search for a solution. I don't remember anybody in close to 800 interviews
Yeah, they
ever
probably ask
telling
a
me.
friend, right?
Yeah, they ask a friend. They
Yeah.
call a colleague. They go to a conference. They do reading. They do research. They may read some product reviews, but they're generally not doing anything related to hopping on the internet. And in fact, most of the decision makers, I'd have to say,
Well, I mean, bringing product reviews generally is the internet, but I know what you mean.
maybe. But I think the surprising thing is that the decision makers aren't even on the internet. They could care less about the internet.
They've delegated it to someone
They've
else.
delegated it to someone else, right? Which Adele called your lead evaluator, someone that's in charge of evaluating, that's in charge of all of the solutions, and they're the ones that are putting together the comparison documents and so forth. They are then putting that up to the decision maker to understand, and at the very moment, at the decision process, then they'll come in and get informed, which I think makes a lot of sense. And even that on its own is very interesting to listen, to learn. Again, I didn't know this. You think that you're influencing the economic decision maker, but in general, you're only going to be dealing with this lead evaluator in most businesses.
Yep.
So that was, I think, the power of that. So you kind of got the process involved. And then something, again, we were talking off camera, is about this trigger event, which is really fascinating.
Oh, yeah, because when you ask someone why of all the days was today the day that you decided to make a decision, that form question that we had on the previous episode of Hard Knocks, where we talked about great. So where that man wrote in saying that, okay, I decided to actually move forward with this because my wife told me I smelled.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, you will only get if you do make someone feel like they are at home, that you do care about them, which is why you need to ask that first question first if you can. But yeah, trigger events. You want to know why did someone start? Because that ends up changing your entire marketing plan. If you know, wow, well, I guess people start doing this, start doing X because of Y, that's where we need to be positioning ourselves. And I think the most classic example of this, where billions are spent, are in, for example, let's think about Target. Why is it that Target will spend billions of dollars sending out free product to people they have identified, sometimes incorrectly? My sister got incorrectly categorized as someone who was pregnant because she was like buying baby formula for one of her friends.
Right.
For months, free product, and then she just gave it away to her friends.
Right.
The reason they do that is they did research similar to this about asking people, take me back to the day when you used to shop at Walmart, but now you shop at Target. What happened? And through that process, asking these questions we're running through, they discovered, wow, a lot of people, when they become pregnant, when they start running a family, those types of things, they are willing to change the brand association they have, which only happens a few other times in life. Pregnancy is one of them. So what they ended up doing is, well, we're more than willing to go and spend billions on this because we know if we convert one of you, you will be with us for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, could be even more than that. So the payoff is huge. But you'd never know to do that or advertise in that way if you didn't ask a question like this that coached someone to think, what changed? You could have done this yesterday, but like, what really happened?
Right. You talk about that as almost like the Popeye moment.
Yeah,
right?
the Popeye moment. Yeah, what I can't stand no more.
Right.
Yeah.
And I started even incorporating that into some of my interviews because I would be interviewing people that were old enough to know who Popeye was. And they would get a kick out of it. And we would start talking about that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, there was a day that I finally put my foot down and said, we're going to go solve this problem. Right. It became a big issue. And I think it's important for us to differentiate between decisions that have to be made immediately. So if there's an emergency situation in your business, you just got shut down by some government inspection or something, and now you have to go find a solution. There really isn't much time to go do any research. yes, you're going to maybe go on the internet and call a friend or,
But you're
someone
making a
that's,
snap decision.
yeah, snap decision. I mean, that's understandable. So like anything in marketing, it's nuanced, right? There is no one solution that fits all. However, for considered purchases, there is a process that people do go through in their mind. And what we learned through the Buyer Persona Institute is they fall into different segments. So different industries buy differently. People at different levels in the organization, based on the budget that they have available to them, buy differently. Their affiliations are different. What channels they're comfortable with. Are they comfortable buying through a Microsoft certified partner, or do they prefer to buy direct from some other vendor? Those are things that come out in these interviews that are really important, and you can't do it unless you do the primary research and actually go talk to real customers, real decision makers.
Yeah, well, what you end up finding out is something known as black swans, the people sitting behind the person you're talking to, the person sitting behind the person you think you're selling to. That's the one who's truly holding the keys to the kingdom, that is really making the decision. It is black swans, like basically is a verbiage out there that just basically means all those things that you didn't think about, right? So the beauty of this question is by asking that. Let's just take an example of, let's say for example, I'm doing this type of research for Best Buy, and they're trying to figure out what are the trigger events, what are the different black swans we need to know about and market to for people buying TVs for Magnolia Theater. I believe that's what it is, right? Magnolia
Sure,
Theater.
that's their brand,
Yeah, used to
right?
be huge, by the way. It was so awesome, and now they like hardly exist anymore. It's really
Yeah.
unfortunate. I loved going in there when my brother used to
I
work
thought it
there.
was great.
Oh, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
However, it was more for fun, less for selling. So, anyways, so when we're talking about finding black swans, now imagine you're talking to me buying a TV, and you're saying, okay, well, take me back to the day you decided to go and buy a TV, and you can position it as a sales rep, not selling a salesy. You can, you don't have to use these questions completely verbatim. You can change it a little bit to add a little thing at the end, being like, because I want to help you find the best TV for you. Oh, okay, great. Add a little bit of clarity there.
Yes.
But what you end up finding out is maybe, yeah, the reason I decided to buy a new TV, sure, I would like a better color picture. Yes, it was 1080p and I would like 4K now, or maybe even 8K. But what really happened was I got home from work and my wife turned on the latest Hallmark movie, because it was the 6 months rundown to Christmas. They start in June, which is just insane to me.
Right.
And you're watching
They have
Christmas.
very loyal viewers.
They have very loyal viewers.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. But maybe what happened is, well, my wife got livid because the TV flickered a few moments. It missed the signal, or she couldn't quite make out the detail in the high climax scene in the movie itself, and she got really mad. And she was saying, listen, David, you have been saying that you are going to go and replace this TV, and I think now's the time. Now's the time. In that very nice sounding way, like, yeah, you know what? You could, but really do it, right?
Right.
And so now that's why I'm there. But if I'm talking to a rep and they don't ask this question, why on earth would I ever bring that up?
Right.
Even though for Best Buy, that is the most important piece of information I can think of. Because now I might run Mother's Day sales, trying to advertise either to the mothers themselves to say, by the way, if you need to get me a gift, get me this. Or who knows? Or maybe they'll advertise on Hallmark.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, they could, but you'd never do it if you didn't uncover who your black swans were, because you asked questions like these.
Right. And just imagine, this is the imagine thing, that if Best Buy actually had a program that incented for their salespeople on the floor to ask this question, to get on their phone afterwards, and to enter this into some form someplace.
Yeah, or just do it via audio now.
Oh,
you don't
it
even
could
have
be
to type
audio.
anymore.
Oh, yeah, of course. Right.
Yeah.
And play with that kind of information. Imagine that.
Oh,
I haven't been in a retail store in my life where any of the salespeople ever asked this question.
yeah.
And it's the most simple thing to ask. And in fact, I think about the big companies that would hire us at the Buyer Persona Institute. Almost all of them had a very large sales team. Not one of the sales team are asking these questions.
Yeah.
They could have saved themselves $100,000 way more than that. On all of the research they do, if they just enabled their sales team to be better salespeople and ask these questions. I mean, really simple stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, the benefit of asking these questions and training your sales team to do them is I know on a number of occasions you've told me that the interviews that you have done for people, they would end by saying thank you
Yes.
because they felt it was cathartic.
Mm-hmm.
Because people generally don't care or they don't have an outlet to talk about it because not all of your friend groups are going to be interested talking about all the generative AI, BS that you're talking about,
Right.
or the little marketing thing or that optimization you made inside of Google AdWords that brought up your ROAS.
Right.
People aren't going to love that, but if you find someone that's legitimately curious about it and they just want to learn more, then man, they just love you. And
Yes.
that would just get you to go to the store more often too anyways.
Right.
And I think that kind of gets on a very important point that if you want to be asking these questions, any of them, from the 3 golden questions we previously talked about to the 2 questions you need right now to do any good customer interview, what's going to set you apart and doing a good job in utilizing them is being legitimately curious. Being legitimately curious about wanting to understand, why did you do that? Okay. In fact, you wouldn't say why. Why is a terrible word to use. How did you do that? Or what made you decide to do that? And just digging in deeper and using these questions as a jumping off point to continue going back and forth. Remember the interview Jod quickly did with me. He was using how do you solve this problem today? And he asked it just twice. But the second time he modified it a little bit because he knew there was a story there. And he was just interested in learning more about the story. And that really is the key of using these questions well, is you have to just want to know.
Yeah. In fact, you're saying that. It makes me think about, for those of that I moved out to Denver formally about 6 months ago. And in that time, I've been looking for a new church. And I'm thinking about how many times after a service, there's an opportunity to meet some of the staff, learn a little bit more about the church. Not one person's ever asked this question, by the way, and how powerful it would be for them to say, because generally, look, there's not 100 people that are darkening the door of a church. It's like 2 or 3, okay?
Yeah.
And afterwards, hey, get a cup of coffee or whatever, and you're mingling, and that one of the staff would say, hey, John, great to meet you. I am curious. Take me back to the day that you decided to start looking for a new church.
Yeah, what happened?
And what happened? And I probably would say, well, I'm new to the area. Oh, new to the area. Where are you from?
Yeah, and
right?
you get into the whole story, and
The
now
whole
you start to build a family there.
Exactly.
And, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is just such good primary research. And again, there's only one church that I know of that actually has a CRM. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And they record this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it probably helps them immensely because they learn about so many
They learn
things.
about the needs of their
people.
parishioners, right?
Yeah.
And then they can start creating programs. And by the way, since they already know your address and your phone number, they can call or send you an email and say, hey, by the way, we're starting this new thing just for people that have said this kind of thing.
Yep.
Right? And applying that in sales and marketing, this is just such a 101 class level. It's so simple.
Yeah, it's really easy to do.
I have yet to see a company do any of this.
Yeah, I've never seen anyone.
0.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So I think we've kind of harped on why these 2 questions are super important. And just to kind of wrap up here and before we move to our last segment that I know John is very excited to use because he's actually prepared this time, is that he said he has 10 questions for me. We're going to stick to 1, though, please.
Right.
You'll stick to 1.
Yeah, just 1.
Yeah, just 1. But the 3 hard knocks we kind of ran through, right? It went through that process of making a product or service or expanding it or just trying to better it, right? Starting with, listen, the way that products are made is you start by finding an actual problem that one of your customers have. It's not starting with field research. That's not how it happens. It's usually the sales team having a pain point and they just come up with something random, or the engineers coming to you and saying, hey, this was awesome. We did this for one customer. Can we do this with more people? And then it's your job as the marketing team to go fix it and go make it happen. And that's how it should work.
Right.
That's how it should work. And then we talked about, now that you have that product, maybe you have a couple different customers, well, what's the order you're going to go through? And you're going to go and find out, what is it we're really selling? Is it a product? Is it a service? Is it actually something different than we never thought about? Is there a different problem that people are using this to solve that wow, okay, I guess we're selling that, not this. And then transferring over to saying, well, how are we going to sell that? Not getting into what your logo is. That doesn't matter right now. You're trying to figure out, well, what channel do I want to go through? How might I position this? What other problems are people having, and how am I going to go and position it to go and attack that? And then only after all that is done do you think about logos and names. Before then, you should have one, sure, but it doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all. And then lastly, now that you have customers, you have a product, you can go interview them how to do it well. Because remember, we want to be curious. We want to find out, what are the black swans in the area? Who am I really selling to? What problem are people using to solve this? Because remember, as I get bigger and bigger and bigger, the gap between me and my customers gets bigger and bigger and bigger over time. And as I'm going and asking questions like, how are you solving this problem today? What I'm doing is saying, I realize that our company has grown to such a size, which might just be 50 to 100 customers, that you physically can't go see them anymore. I realize that we're not seeing all the different problems that are being sold. Like WD-40 has 1,000 different things that it can be used for. But if they never went to their customers and asked questions like this, they'd never know all the wild use cases. They'd never market to it because they would have no idea how. Because they'd be stuck in their brain just thinking about, that's how it's always been. Mm-hmm. So that's the big value of all three of these. And so now we're going to move over into the last segment of our discussion, where I ask a question to John asks a question to me. Doesn't have to be about what we talked about. Sometimes it is, because that's kind of what comes top of funnel. And my question to you is, of all of the hundreds of interviews you've done, because you've done how many, like 800 interviews? Or
Close to 800. Right?
Yeah, okay. So we'll say 1,000, because that's a pretty cool number,
sure,
right?
Round up.
Yeah, so we've done 1,000 different interviews with big companies and learned a lot of different things. What was one of the most interesting, surprising, curious things that you ended up learning?
Yeah, I've actually had a couple of moments to think about that. And I had an opportunity to do a research project for a company that was based in China, I believe it was. And they are a builder of homes in some very lovely locations, one of which was in London. And the question was whether or not, or how should they be marketing these homes? And these homes, when I tell you, these are basically 3,000 to 4,000 square foot apartments in downtown London that are fully managed. I mean, they have a concierge, they have parking, they have drivers. Awesome. You know, this is very high end.
Yeah.
And so I was fascinated with how they are going to market these things. And at that time, doing any kind of technology related, what do you call that? Where you walk through a
like the 3D visualizers. 3D visual, and stuff.
Yeah, walking through that was a really big thing.
Virtual walkthrough.
Virtual walkthroughs. Thank you. And
remember, marketing lingo 101. You gotta know.
There you go.
Lingo.
Right. Thank you. So
that's a good way, by the way, of lowering a barrier.
Yeah.
Just real quick, if you want to disarm a customer, make sure you know what their language is.
Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah,
point.
Doing these kind of interviews, you'll learn what their language. Anyways.
Yeah. So now I know your language.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
It's very technical. But the thing that was fascinating to me is, who are the buyers for this? The buyers were Chinese, mainland Chinese people that were sending their children to school in London and in New York, and they wanted a safe place for these children to live. Didn't know that even existed. And they wanted a place that they not only were safe, but they could keep an eye on them. Hence the concierge services, which were telling them whether or not they were safe, whether they were entertaining, and what was going on in the apartments, and which I understand. And these folks were spending a lot of money and taking care of their children, which I thought was admirable. The thing that I had no idea is the number of people that are from other countries that are sending these children to these very, very upscale schools that are not staying on campus. They are off campus.
Oh, wow.
All by themselves, okay, living in this exquisite location. And of course, my experience in college was I want to be on campus with other students. That was the whole idea of being there.
Yeah.
But that is not what this audience was. This was an audience buying something for their children to go to school safely. Was completely blew my mind that this was even out there. So that was the most fascinating interview that I did. Because I didn't really know much about that market. I was happy to learn about it. Didn't know that there were buyers like that were buying multi-million-dollar places for their children to live during college. And it was just a whole new experience for me, and I really enjoyed that. That was fun. That was a good learning experience.
Note, he was really actually interested, and that's why they told him so many interesting things. Because the person on the other line, they're like, wait, I can have a moment of catharsis here and just unwind to someone who legitimately does want to know. And now you used that for the benefit of the client you were interviewing.
Right.
And they learned a lot of things, but that's fine. It's not bad to do that. So I'm just harping on that point. You really need to learn to just want to learn.
Yes.
It's very important. I mean, and if you don't do that, then all the questions and literally everything that we ran through in all these questions
Right.
will have no purpose. You will fail every single time. It's a must have.
Right.
Yeah. So what's your question for me?
So my question for you is, how do you think the relationship between analog and digital marketing, me being the analog guy, you being the digital marketing, how do you think that's going to evolve in the coming years?
Like when they're linked together, like one helps the other.
Yeah, right.
Or how they're like, you have a joint campaign.
Right, like the campaign we ran for one of our clients. It was a dimensional piece.
Oh, that thing that had the, because of their flooring company.
Right, right.
It's this literal bar, like this big, and there's like 6 different textures on it. Because they help people with OSHA compliance get floor friction on their floor so people don't slip as much, so they need a way. Works like demo.
Right.
How do you do a looks like demo for a service where you send out something like this so they can feel what it's going to feel like? How frictiony is it? That's a new word, frictiony.
Right.
Put in the dictionary. And what's it going to look like?
Yeah.
And then they can reach out. But
And that idea, by the way, came from you.
Oh yeah.
You were, so he's the digital marketer, but he was doing research for this same client for a whole different product line and was online and found a company that was doing some kind of a giveaway for a different product altogether.
Yeah, safety tape.
Safety, right? And they sent you a box.
Yeah, I was like, we should do this.
And we should do this, right? So then, it was in the back of our mind and we found the right application. But my question is, so
how's that going to evolve?
That's the analog.
Yeah.
But then in order to promote it, we were running AdWords campaigns to get people to that page, then they could fill out a form and have it mailed to them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious on that. And then does AI have any relationship to that? Is it going to change that relationship?
Yeah. So it's a good question. I would say there is the shortcut way to answer that question, and there is the deeper way to answer that question. So I'll do the deeper one, then come to the shortcut. So all in all, the main reason why a lot of people don't do joint campaigns is a matter of staff, budget, and time. If you had unlimited cash, if you had unlimited time and passion, very important, you would obviously do all of these things. There's no way that you wouldn't, right? It makes total sense. You want to hit your customers with where they are. You don't want to change their thought and behavior patterns. You're not going to all of a sudden make someone go to your website who would never go to your website. You want to go to where they are. That's why so many companies, despite not really liking TikTok, they still do things on TikTok.
Right.
Because that's where their audience is. Those poor souls. I really don't like TikTok. I was making videos for it, and then literally after I made my second video, they banned my account for literally no reason. No reason at all. So I'm like, I am not doing TikTok anymore. But anyways, it's a legitimate platform. And so, there's a lot of value. And if I'm doing something digital, well, if there is a way, remember, works like demo. That's where something physical is great, because there's only so much that if I'm delivering a service or I'm delivering an actual product or something like that for someone to really see, feel, and touch something, it's a whole different part of your body, a whole different emotion when I have something I
really
kind of see
right.
and feel. So it's really, I think it's still very important. I would say that where AI will really come in to help ingrain those more, because I do think that we'll see them intertwined a bit more, is because AI is making it a lot easier for people to supplement the staff that they don't have or to do more with the budget that they're given. So now all of a sudden you have the ability to focus all of your attention on making that analog piece of mail and then making a newsletter campaign to go along with it. Like maybe what if you're sending out, say, postcards for a lawn care service, why don't you also offer on there, instead of just selling the service, what if maybe you add some value add where on the back of a postcard it was, hey, by the way, fall is coming up. It's a good time to do X, Y, and Z to make sure pests don't come into your area. Here's a little tutorial about how to do so. And the back of your postcard is literally going through that process. And at the bottom, it's, if you like this piece of information, by the way, we have a free newsletter. We send out stuff once a month to make sure that you're keeping the quality of your green grass and your trees and everything wonderful. Well, that's a digital mixed with analog all of a sudden.
Right.
But I'd never be able to do that before because it takes too much time and money to be able to do. But generative AI is getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
And people are getting ingenious of turning these into turnkey solutions. So I can bring my expertise in and it can help me do what otherwise I would have needed 3 people to do before.
Yeah, that's the concern I have as a marketer. Like, in our hands, I can see that we're going to be very creative in how we apply AI to our work. But I think there's other folks that are going to let this go too far. They're not going to get involved and they will get eaten up.
Yeah, they could.
Yeah.
They could. And that is something that very well could happen.
Yeah.
And it probably will. But the reason I don't get as concerned about that is that's what happens in any type of industrial
absolutely.
revolution.
Oh,
Yeah,
without question.
You have to change with the times. And in this
Yeah.
case, I think it's a good change.
Sure.
By the way, I said there was a cheap answer. The cheap answer that's an automatic yes is, what are trade shows? Trade shows are going to be more popular than ever before. People need that personal touch. And with all this generative AI BS that is going out there, I do study it, I do work it, but I know a lot of it is a lot of BS. And all my friends would agree that it is. People are looking for something authentic. And what is more authentic than a human relationship? That, I mean, that's what sales and marketing is. At the end of the day, the only thing sales and marketing is a relationship. It's just that marketing comes before and after, and sales is during. Ta-da! That's marketing and sales. It's just having a relationship with your customers.
Yeah.
That's really it.
I think that's what we enjoy about it.
Yeah, that is what we enjoy about it. But for trade shows, they're not going anywhere. They're absolutely not going anywhere. And they're this really interesting case of the analog marketing of being there, but before then it's usually done digitally. So it kind of comes together into one. So
Yeah,
that's a long-winded answer to
I
your
love that.
question.
If you end on trade shows, everyone knows that I'm a really big fan of trade shows. That's huge.
Yeah. But hey, we ran through a lot today. Remember that for you to make literally any of these things happen, you have to be curious. You have to want to learn. You have to want to put aside what you're trying to push in terms of sales and just say, okay, well, tell me about what you're trying to accomplish here. Remember, you can do it in different spins. You can add your own personality to all the questions. For all of the things we talked about here on Hard Knocks are not hard and fast. You have to be like, each word matters. Bring your personality into it. But everyone, it's been super fun. I hope you learned a lot. But until next time, everyone, stay curious.
Bye.